Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. We've got a special treat this morning. We've got best-selling author Shelley Shepard Gray. Good morning.
Good morning, Susie. Thank you for having me.
Well, we know you're busy, so we're delighted that you can take a few minutes and spend them with us. Sometimes we get to talk with people who impact our community from as far away as Colorado Springs, and that's the case today. Having a big impact on our community. You really write about people that we know about, because we do have just a wonderful Amish community and Mennonite community in the area, and that seems to be a people that are you really have a heart for. Can you tell me about that?
I really do. I've written quite a few Amish novels, and it all started back when we lived just north of Cincinnati. I lived right near an Amish community. And I started going there, to believe it or not, to go get cinnamon rolls.
Right.
And I guess it's always about the food. But, it's one thing led to another, and someone at my church, just happened to grow up Mennonite, and her best friend was Old Order Amish. And so when I decided to start writing about novels about the Amish, they kind of were my guides at first, and then I was able to connect with quite a few people up in Sugar Creek and Walnut Creek, which is all about the central part of Ohio.
That is our backyard. That's right.
Oh,
That's
oh,
exactly
great.
Yes. And so you really could connect and have friends and great relationships with people. That's what makes them so filled out as real people when you write.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. I mean, one thing I've tried to do is, many of the Amish ladies that I've visited with is they don't like to be portrayed as cookie cutter people, as they're all the same because they all drive buggies and wear a bonnet, and I've just tried to make them as varied as possible. And it's just been great fun. I just feel like it's been such a gift to get to know these people, just as friends. Mm-hmm. And my husband always laughs. He reminds me, he's just like, I'm so glad we don't live next door to these ladies you talk to, because you'd never get anything done. We're always talking about latest books we've read, or what diet we're starting on, or what pie we're baking, or so forth. So it seems like they've really just been wonderful to me, reminding me often of how much we have in common, although at first glance people might think we're very different.
Mm-hmm. Well, the cinnamon roll diet would be, I think, the best one. I would be all about that for sure.
Me too.
I wonder, because we all also have wonderful theater in the area, and sometimes books, novels about the Amish have been turned into like a play. Any thought of turning any of your books into a play that might be actually produced in Sugar Creek or Walnut Creek?
That would be a dream come true. I guess the powers that be that handle things like that, they've just found some other people that would fit the bill. But I hope one day they really will think about giving one of my books a try. I've been to the Amish theaters, and up in Sugar Creek and Walnut Creek, and they're wonderful. I've been to them in Shipshewana and Lancaster too. So that would be a very proud moment to hear that one of my novels was going to be made into a play or a movie one day.
I'm glad you think so. Okay, well, we'll do what we can on our end. Let's talk.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe all of us getting together, just give them a nudge. I don't know.
It's going in the suggestion box for sure.
That's right.
Let's talk about the protective one.
Oh, thank you. This is the first book that's come out this year. It's actually the fourth book in my Walnut Creek series. Two came out last year, and then this year starting with a protective one. But they're all meant to be standalone novels. But this one I think is especially dear to me, just because it has the main romance is about two people who have known each other forever. or at least it feels like forever. And then some things happen that it really just makes them look at their relationship again, and they have a whole new level of understanding, and a romance blossoms. The protective one also, has an overlying theme about how we're all protecting each other. My heroine, her name is E.A., Elizabeth Ann. EA has a sewing student who is an English lady who she really starts realizing that there's something wrong with this lady's life, and she later finds out that she's a victim of some abuse. And so she, even though, EA isn't very young, isn't very knowledgeable, she realizes that she needs to step out of her comfort zone and help this lady as much as she can. So I guess there's quite a few themes going on in this novel. It was fun to write. I always know things are going well when I forget to look at the clock and my page numbers, and I'm just like, oh, just one more page, just one more page.
Yeah.
So that's really how this book was written, which was kind of nice for me. It's a nice change for sure.
There's something in your voice when you talk about EA. She's a real person to you. And
She is, and every time I end a series, I think my editors just laugh because I always send them an email. Any chance we could do another book in the series? Because it feels always like they've become my next door neighbors, and I know everything about them. They're real people to me, and it's hard to say goodbye to them all when a series is over.
That is so funny that you worded that way. I just wrote down, is it hard to let go? Is it hard to say goodbye to them when you're done? Or do you want to just keep writing more and more?
Oh, I do. And, I mean, my husband has a funny story, and we're empty nesters, so he has to listen to me a lot, talk about my made-up people. But, I remember years ago, one time at dinner, he was kind of talking about his problems at work, and he goes, well, how was your day? And I almost started crying. I mean, I was like, I'm so worried about Lily, and I start going on. And he finally just stares at me, and he goes, Shelley, you made her up. She can do whatever you want her to. Yes. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I could.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes I hesitate sharing this story because it just makes me sound pretty strange. But really, I think that is, for me, that's how I am able to write a book. I like being at the places where I write about, and I like getting to know my characters so well that they feel like real people.
You take them down a road and then you bring them back again. How do you choose what's going to happen to somebody? Those are some kind of hard topics that you've let them go through, but you teach us all at the same time.
I don't know. I just really feel like God is working with me. I mean, I try to write a book that is a book that I would want to read. I read a lot, and I'm a very fast reader. So I guess what I sometimes do is I'll just be like, oh, okay, things are just a little too slow and sweet now. How can I shake things up? But really, I mean, sometimes I'll just be writing along. And, well, for example, in the protective one, I had EA with some different students, and then all of a sudden in came this lady named Marta, and I just start thinking, oh my gosh, I think there's something going on with Marta. And that's how I ended that day, and just thinking, all right, I think she's a character that's going to mean something. So, which for me is exciting. I know some authors are just, and I'm jealous of their ability to just plot out every single detail. That's not me. I'm just kind of, I have the bare bones, and then I'm just along for the ride.
Oh, that's a fun way to describe it. What's your process? Do you get up in the morning and say, okay, today I'm going to just write for this many hours or this many pages, or do you wait for the spirit to move you, or how do you do that?
I write almost every day, especially if I have deadlines that are kind of close together. And I aim for 10 pages a day, and or 2,000 words. And I literally, I have notebooks, and I write down the page numbers I hope to get to. So, for example, on the book I'm working on now, I'm in the 200s. So on my notebook in my office, it's 201, 202. And every time I finish a page, I X it off.
Oh, that's a good way.
So, it's very old school, but it works for me. And I'm not one of these people that can procrastinate. I think some people, authors especially, they thrive on that adrenaline push, and all that does is just make me feel sick to my stomach. I just like to just kind of slow and steady wins the race for me.
Well, and that old saying of good writing's in the rewriting, do you ever go back? Because this way gives you plenty of time to just go back and even tweak things and add things.
No, I do. I usually write fairly short chapters, like maybe 6, 7 pages, and then I'll go back and add more details. A lot of my characters, they just happen to be Amish or Mennonite or English, and so when I write, I know where I want their conversations to go. I write down their dialogue, but I won't really pay too much attention to what they're wearing. So maybe the second time around, I'm like, oh, I haven't said what a single person in this chapter looks like, or maybe I just have them standing around, and then I'll give them something to do, and then that'll be the next layer.
Yeah.
The last layer before I send it to my first reader is just, I like having a theme going through. For example, in the protective one, it is protection and how God protects us all and is looking over us, and so I read it through the novel a third time just to make sure that that some of the things I wanted to touch on are touched on and they're integrated in the story and not too heavy-handed or something like that.
Do you ever run them by another set of eyes before they go to your publisher? I'm thinking the dialect with Amish or the look, the clothing and so forth could, you want to get it right. And do you ever have them put input, your friends put input into it, or do you pretty much have it down by now?
I have a lady, her name is Lynn, and she was actually my daughter, who's now 27. She was my daughter's 5th grade teacher, so I've known her a long, long time. She's my first reader, and she kind of checks just to make sure I have, basic details and everything, and I like don't forget. Like sometimes, for example, I might put a pet in chapter 3 and then I'll forget they have a dog, and she'll be like in chapter 30, where's the dog? So she'll say some things like that. Yeah. But as far as the details for give them to my friends who are Amish, I really don't. Although when I've done research, sometimes I'll write about something I'm just not. I just don't have as good of a knowledge as I want to. Example would be years ago, I had my heroine was an Amish school teacher, so I wrote my friend Clara just all kinds of questions and mailed them off to her, and then she mailed me back the answers. To
be able to describe a true Amish classroom.
Right, and I seem to always ask kind of strange things. Like, I remember one of my questions was, well, what are some things people bring for lunch? I guess it is always about the food, but that's the kind of thing. I mean, that's the kind of thing I notice. I would want to see, well, what is in that pail that they're bringing for lunch? Well, is it last night's leftovers, or is it a ham sandwich? And so. I think sometimes, my Amish friends laugh at my questions because they'll say answers and they'll be like, oh, and I'll think to myself, well, I'd do the same thing. I don't know why I thought it was different because they were Amish,
But that's what immerses us all into that experience. We just go through it with them. We're visiting with Shelley Shepard Gray, talking about the protective one. We'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community. Welcome back to Our Community. Susie Thomas with Shelley Shepard Gray, talking about the third book in a 4-book series, and this one is the protective one. Shelley, let's go back for people who want to read them all. Lead us up to this one.
Okay. Well, the premise of the Walnut Creek series is that there's a group of 8 friends, and they all have different backgrounds. Some are Old Order Amish, some are New Order Amish, some are Mennonite, some are English. And how they all met is one of the characters' moms kind of babysat when anyone needed, some babysitting, whether in the summer and they had, full-time moms working, or else just kind of drop in. They all became friends. They all kind of drifted away. And the first book in the series is called The Patient One. And it has kind of a rough and was a difficult setup, but one I believed in strongly. And that was one of the members of the 8. He was English. His name was Andy. He was kind of their self-proclaimed leader. He commits suicide. And the novel begins at the funeral. And they are missing him, and they also realize that they had all drifted apart. So pretty soon, around the beginning of the book, they all just kind of make a promise to each other to try to be there for each other more than they had been. And so that's kind of how the whole series is set up. Each novel has a theme. And it's really all based on a conversation I had with my Bible study group. One time we were all talking about how we see the Lord working. And some people said, oh, well, he's really patient. And someone said, well, he never gives up on me. He's so loyal. And, for example, again, he's always there to hold my hand when I need it. He protects me. Wonderful image to have for each of the books. So book 1 has to do with patience, and the Lord being patient with all of them, and the characters being patient for each other. The Englisher named Marie, and she was a former homecoming queen, and she had always had a crush on a guy named John, who's New Order Amish, and it turns out he had too. They just never felt like they could cross that boundary of their religions. So they end up falling in love. So that's just still one continues on, and it just it has it was all around Harley, who is remodeling a house of Katie, and they were 2 members of the 8. The protective one is the one we've been talking about with EA and Will. And then finally, the trustworthy one has to do with 2 people that were friends with the 8, but they weren't actually exactly in the group. But they meant a lot to all of them, and that has to do with her name is Kendra. So it was a great joy to write this series. I loved especially with y'all being in the Holmes County, Wayne County area.
Shelley, I think you've dropped out a little bit there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is
that's
this better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Tell me about right where, especially in the Holmes County area.
Oh, yeah, especially in the Holmes County area. I think y'all could agree that not everyone leads separate lives. For example, I've been in Walnut Creek Cheese Shop or the Sugar Creek Library, just any place, and there's everyone there. And I've spoken about people this way, and I've heard others say, oh, that's Mary, and she's lives down the street. It's not, oh, that's Mary, she's old order Amish. People aren't labeling each other. They're really thinking about each other as people. And that's really what I wanted to convey in these books is that we may all be different. We may not all believe exactly the same things, but there's a lot of people that have just some wonderful friendships to cherish.
I love that you're calling it the Walnut Creek series. That's going to go very big in our area because we all love Walnut Creek. What have you learned about friendship in general by doing these, and what have you learned that's specific to the Amish Mennonite community about friendship by doing these books?
You know, what I've noticed most about the Amish community with friendship is really just, how forgiving they are, and I've made mistakes, and it's like they try to see the best of everyone.
Mm.
And I love that. I love that everyone isn't. Maybe some people are, because everyone's human, but I don't always notice everyone just carrying grudges. They're just trying to give people a second chance, trying to see the best in them. What I've really thought a lot about while writing this series is just how much I need to value my friends, and to take time to reach out to them. I one of my faults is that I'm goal driven, and I love to write, I love to work, and sometimes I forget that I need to take time and call someone I haven't called, or reached out to in a couple of weeks, or write someone a note, or just, even if it's getting on Facebook or something, and just saying, "Oh, I was thinking about you today." I don't want to take my friends for granted, or a lifelong friendship for granted. I think even those relationships need nurturing.
And that, can't we all say that? You, again, really tackle some tough, I mean, you start the whole series with a suicide. So there's some tough topics. Is there anywhere you won't go because of you don't want to offend them? Or do they kind of give you an open, I don't want to say an open book, but an open book to go in and
Right.
do with what you want?
I don't know. I tell, I mean, my Amish friends have just, they've been very kind, but they also know that I am not Amish, and I write fiction, and and I'm okay, if somebody say they're not comfortable with reading a book with some characters that have dealt with a sudden death. I can understand that. Maybe they'll like another book I've written.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah, honestly, but for example, with this theme of suicide, I mean, my father committed suicide, over, I think, almost 30 years ago.
I'm sorry.
So it really wasn't something I wanted to think about, especially I didn't want to put it to the pages and open myself in that way until this series. And that is just my personal story. So no, I just figure I'm going to just write the best story I can, and it just seems like for me, everybody has something, whether they have some wonderful, great stories in their past, but maybe they have some not so great stories in their past. And I hear from readers all the time that said, I thought I was the only one that ever thought this, or I thought I was the only one that ever experienced this, and reading your book made me feel like I wasn't so alone. And I don't expect that from readers, but when I do hear from them, it feels good. It makes me feel like, okay, maybe I'm doing something right, and it makes me grateful.
Well, and absolutely, and how everything can be used for good, that can be a cathartic experience for the writer or the reader when you've gone through something traumatic like that, and to be able to share. You also interweave faith throughout. How does that drive the story?
Well, I think into a lot of ways it drives the whole story. My faith is something I feel like I'm still on a journey. I'm imperfect, and I want to be better, and I love writing characters that are kind of in the same boat, and they're also striving to be better. And sometimes when I do write about these hard subjects, I feel like I'm constantly praying, and while I'm writing, just please don't mess this up, Shelley. And I think there's a fine line. books at heart. I really just I hope somebody enjoys reading them for a couple of hours. But if they do connect with the theme, I like that also.
Let's give everyone all the titles in the full Walnut Creek series. Starting out with the very first one is
the patient one, followed by the loyal one, followed by the current release, the protective one, and it will finish up with the trustworthy one.
The trustworthy one. And suppose you're finishing up the trustworthy one and you have another idea. Can there be a fifth?
Yeah, there is a little ebook called Promises of Tomorrow, and it actually takes place about a year after the trustworthy one. It's a little ebook novella, and it is going to be coming out. And I was so excited about that. And we'll see what happens in the future. That the next series that will get published in 2021, and I'm almost done with the first book in the series, and it's so fun. It's the Berlin Bookmobile series. So it all takes place in Berlin, and it's all around. It's kind of a librarian who is driving around the bookmobile. She's almost like a matchmaking fairy godmother. Like, she's just a real helpful person.
Oh, fun.
And so it's I've really been enjoying this, and I've gotten to go in the bookmobile here in Colorado Springs, and just really get a sense for being on board that. So it's been a lot of fun doing the research.
For someone who lives in Colorado Springs, you certainly have vivid memories of your time here in Middle Ohio. And what maybe very special memories do you keep with you? What about this? Yeah, we know the food. It's all about the food.
Well, I've hosted 2 girlfriend getaways in Holmes County. One was a charm girlfriend getaway, and then the one I think I did 2 years ago was in Sugar Creek. I have a lot of fun memories. Probably my most fun was going to Yoder's Amish Farm with a group of readers, and they were doing, we were getting a tour of the house. Well, as you might imagine, I've been on a lot of Amish farms, so I was kind of bored, honestly, looking around the house because I had already seen it. And so I went out to the barn and started visiting with an Amish man, and there were all these baby animals, which was just so fun. But anyway, a dachshund was running around, and I could tell she had just had puppies, and I was asking the Amish farmer, I'm like, well, where are her puppies? And he goes, oh, they're in a pen over there. Would you like to see them? You can walk in the stall. Well, I could hardly get over there fast enough. Long story short, I ended up getting a puppy.
Oh, how cool.
And his name is Eddie, and he's half dachshund, half beagle. And sure enough, it was funny. I had asked this farmer, because there was a litter of 7 puppies all running around, and I said, oh, I guess they're all spoken for. And he said, oh, no, only 2. Oh. And I said, well, are they real expensive? And he said, oh, about $100. And I called my husband while I'm standing in the stall, saying, Tom, I think we need a puppy. And he goes, oh, no, we don't. So we hung up, and then I took a picture of it and sent it, and he called me back, and he goes, I want the one that has a widow's peak, like Eddie Munster, like from that old TV show, The Munsters.
Sure.
And so all these readers are like, Shelley, what are you doing? And I said, my husband said I could get the puppy that looks like Eddie. So we all started picking up these puppies and taking pictures.
Oh, how fun.
Anyway, so that's probably one of my favorite.
Absolutely.
I loved being with the readers and experience Amish country through their lives. I loved getting to be in this farm surrounded by all the animals and getting to talk with the farmer. And I just love that I now have this Amish puppy who's now 3 named Eddie. And every time I see him, I remember that moment.
It sparks a memory. We've been visiting with Shelley Shepard Gray, newest book, The Protective One. You can get it wherever books are sold. Shelley, thank you so much for bringing this to our community today.
Oh, Oh, thank you. Thank you for your time and your hospitality. I really appreciate it.
Yay!
Yay!
Thank you so much.
Oh.
You're so good. Thank you.
Oh, well, you make it so easy. So I really appreciate your time, Susie. Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling. I was starting to freak out. I'm like, where's her number? So I'm so grateful. Thanks.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, I know people get busy, and I know a lady like you is, and so I was almost like reluctant to call because I didn't want to bother you, but I'm glad I did. I'm glad it worked out.
So glad. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk soon, I hope.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.